And basically you wash this entire idea, this entire campaign in the kind of the authority that a big brand bestows. This is something that's very important, and you can certainly change the way people behave, change the way that people are receptive to engaging with sustainable behaviour with the authority that you wrap around it. So moving on to the next four. We're not going to talk about the bottom two today. Ask at the right time and ask for the right incentive. They're kind of vaguely familiar, and there's quite a lot of stuff in there. We're going to talk about ask using the right fake authority and asking in the right order. The right fake authority, we're starting to get into sort of slightly strange territory for some people, but you, like me, probably don't think that a smiley face or a sad face could actually make a difference to you, because we're all grown adults. They could maybe make a difference to children, but they do. They make a big, significant difference. In a study on two different neighbourhoods, two different streets, they gave everyone their electricity consumption sheets on the left-hand side. They told you the person who used the least electricity, the person who used the most electricity, and where you were in that scheme. In another street they did exactly the same, but they gave you a little smiley face or a sad face depending on how well you've done. Well done, you've done not bad, you're bad. And what they found with those two different streets, and it's important it was kept hyperlocal in two streets, on Group A, you basically had a kind of rush to the middle. High users were a bit embarrassed, we better reduce. Low users thought, well, if everyone else is using it, sod it, let's put everything on and we'll have a bit of a party. But on the other street, with the smiley face, sad face, that was able to anchor the low users and kept them consistent. So, okay, fine, is that just a bit of a fun kind of thing, little experiment? No. It made a 40% difference to the energy saved on that street. 40%, that's a big number, right? It's a significant number. So smiley face is 40%. This is weird stuff. They're only going to get weirder. That experiment went down so well that a company in America decided to implement it. It's called O-Power. They started out last year. They're doing exactly the same thing. As you can see, they take a fee for delivering electricity consumption to consumers in this way. Everybody's interested in this from a sort of broad political spectrum, as you can see, from Fox News to Greenbiz, USA Today, Business Week. Washington Post say it's the best example of climate psychology in action. It's working today. Both Cameron and Obama talking about it too, very excited about the possibilities of this. Cameron says behavioural economics can transform people's behaviour in a way that all the bullying and badgering from a government cannot possibly achieve. And Obama, when he went to visit, said, blah, 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 it's good for consumers, it's good for our economy, and it's good for our environment. So all this from a smiley face or a sad face. But I think working quite effectively there. So, the context can change the way people behave significantly. Asking in the right order is something that confuses quite a lot of people. This a little bit like a maths experiment for the afternoon, but it is quite good. You've got trade in A, trade in B. You trade in a car, a 10 mile per gallon car, to a 12.5 mile per gallon car. You'll save some fuel, right? Yeah. If you trade in a 25 mile per gallon car for a 50 mile per gallon car, you'll also save some fuel. Which side saves the most? A, trade in A, 10 to or B, 25. It's got to be 25 to 50, right? What I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you this question in a different order. We're not going to do miles per gallon. We're going to switch it. We're going to do gallons per mile, or gallons per 100 miles, just stop it being a weird kind of, 0.00 number. 10 miles per gallon is 10 gallons per 100 mile. 12.5 is 8. 25 miles per gallon is 4. 50, 2. So just by changing the order in which I'm asking you this question, now which trade-in saves the most fuel? Well, they both save exactly the same. And we're not the only ones to realise what MPG, undervaluing improvements in efficient cars and overvaluing. We're not the only ones to realise this. New York Senate, as recently as February, have just passed a law requiring manufacturers to sticker their cars with gallons per mile instead of miles per gallon. It's a significant thing. Changing the order in which you ask someone something can significantly affect their behaviour. We're all highly context dependent. So we're going to move on and I'll talk about the top two, which can be quite funny, adding options and taking away options. We can have a look at the other two, ask but have a default option and ask a different question. Ask but have a default option, quite interesting. Someone mentioned something similar to this before. Conference, not last year, but all the years up until last year have had a meat-based meal. It's an evening sit-down thing. Meat-based meal as the standard and a vegetarian option as the default. And whenever they've done that, pretty much you get a kind of 80-20, right? Most people stick with the meat, that 20% will have a vegetarian meal. So they thought, last year, let's just change it around the other way completely. Let's have the vegetarian option as default, and if anybody wants to have the meat, they can. Yeah? Anybody. They had enough there for everybody to have it if they wanted to. Totally switched it the other way. Completely switched the other way. So from 80-20 to 80-20 the other way around. So simply having the right default option can change the way people behave. What's really sort of fundamental and quite interesting here is that you can see that if, there's no building lacks an architecture, right? So no choice lacks a context. We're all designing the context in which information is displayed, whether you know it or not, and it's having effect whether you know it or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So one of the most important things that we can do, we think, using these behavioural quirks is to in one instance is to set the defaults at something quite interesting. So what about asking a different question? Sounds like cheating. That's the wrong cheating. How do you create the desire to use the stairs? There's an underground station in Sweden where there's stairs and there's an escalator next to it. And if you watch the film, everybody goes up the escalator. No one really uses the stairs. If everyone used the stairs, you could turn the escalator off. That would make a bit of a difference. Put a sign up, please use the stairs. I don't know. How do you do it? Well, what about turning the stairs into piano stairs? That's quite fun. They tried this experiment. Everybody ran up the stairs. 66% of more people used the stairs. It got a lot of people using the stairs, but it didn't necessarily change behaviour much. And if you look at the film, people are running up and down and getting dogs to run up and down and trying to do all sorts of trying to play all sorts of music. Going up the scale's harder than coming down, I think. So what about asking a completely different question? These are the stairs in the Goodnight Hostel in Lisbon. They simply tell you how many calories you're using as you go up, which is quite an interesting thing. So the question, obviously saying, one of the ways in which you can change behaviour is to ask a different question. Instead of saying, do you want to take the stairs, say, do you want to lose weight or get fit or something like that. So these two, broadly speaking, are about the framing effect, how you can frame a question, how you can communicate depending on how you frame things. Next four, we're not going to talk about, again, all of these. We're not going to look at the bottom two, ask nothing except measurement and ask nothing other than to go public, as interesting as they are. We'll have a look at let feedback ask the question and don't ask, just simply tell. Let the feedback ask the question. So Southern California, Edison did everything that you would expect, probably everything that a modern marketing agency would tell you to do, use emails and text messages, be cool and groovy and contact people about their energy use, and that will change their behaviour. It didn't change their behaviour at all. So what they gave everybody was the ambient orb. You might be familiar with the ambient orb. It's an orb and it's ambient. It's green. You plug it in. It's a really crude depiction of energy use. So it's green when you're below average, everyone else's average, and it's red when you're above average. So it's really just obvious way of telling you that you're using a lot of energy. Did it work? It worked. Within weeks, peak time energy use had reduced by 40%. Peak time is quite an important time because the energy companies trying to manage their energy delivery. So that's a kind of simple way of getting people to behave differently by giving them some feedback about what they're doing. So don't ask, tell is even more kind of a light touch. In Australia, on tax returns, they simply said that most people are honest. That was it. I don't know if this says anything about the Australians, but just simply said most people are honest. And deductions plunged by 47%. Worked it out, it's roughly about $800 million US in extra revenue simply for saying most people are honest.